Hi everybody, my name is Joyce Bock from Salubrious Events, and today we are going to talk to Captain Randy Kramer. We had an event 2 weeks ago where he gave us a talk and a Q&A session. Unfortunately, we ran out of time and there were a lot more questions, so we thought we'll do an interview and answer the rest of the questions that the audience had. So without further ado, I will welcome Randy.
The planet making more and more money and being incredibly productive and being about having an incredibly vigorous and strong economy, I would be on the side of arguing, though, that the way that happens is when you have full participation. And full participation means that everyone has a right to participate, which means that there are apparatus of society that have a responsibility to help those people be able to be responsive to that through education, through housing, through social services, and through the elimination of poverty.
Mm-hmm. So,
Because that's what our smart extraterrestrial neighbors and friends do. They do that. So if we want to catch up and be productive and be accepted in the intergalactic community, we're going to have to come along.
okay. Is there an example of one of those advanced civilizations?
I mean, any of them I could make, but since I spent some time on Sonara, which is in the Cassiopeian system, I can speak to that. They have an amazing, thriving civilization, completely green, completely clean, very low crime, 100% healthcare coverage, 100% housing. There's no poverty line. There's no poverty line. There's no group of people that are so poor that they don't know what to do with themselves. The society is incredibly functional. It is incredibly rich with experience, knowledge, creativity, art, science, development, engineering. And they do so by making sure that that social suffering is minimized, because they believe, as psionically emergent creatures, that collective social suffering harms the whole of society, harms every family, harms every social structure, harms every structural social unit, because you're creating an environment of despair for certain numbers of people who are sending out a vibration of fear and despair and anxiety to the rest of the world. It brings down the collective consciousness of the entire world when you have social suffering. So by reducing social suffering whenever possible, they are encouraging the psionic evolution of their entire species.
Exactly. So in that civilization, is there a government or is it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, they have an elected system of government where local representatives are elected, and representatives from the local group goes to a slightly larger body that represents a slightly larger geographical area that has representatives from that group that go to a slightly larger group of body that represents a slightly larger geographical area, up the chain and down the chain. So it's very community oriented, in the sense that if you live in a community in a city and you think, oh, there's not enough stop signs, you would know who to talk to, and he would know who to talk to say, here's what we have to do. It could get you a conversation, with the person that you need to talk to about that within a reasonable amount of time, and you can make your case why you think your neighborhood needs more stop signs. And it's community oriented in the way that the person who's responsible for that would take a good look at it and go, maybe you're right. Looks like we could use a couple more stop signs. They're okay. And then they get stop signs. Because their system has essentially eliminated corruption by creating seriously enforceable laws against it, and against not doing your job as a civic servant, as a public servant. So they actually have written into their lawful code that as a civil servant, you absolutely have to be engaged in what you do is for the public trust. And if you do anything that can be seen as self-serving or profiteering, you can be severely reprimanded for it. And we have laws like that too, that are rarely enforced, which is part of the problem. They enforce them. So corruption is enforced. People are arrested for corruption. Politicians do get arrested for corruption there. It does happen. It's not like they've completely eliminated 100%, but because they enforce the laws that regulate that, they have way less of it because they enforce the rules that say that when you break them, you pay for it. We have a system at the moment where if you break the rules, you probably aren't going to have to pay for it because no one's probably going to hold you to accountability for it, and you're probably not going to have to suffer the consequences for it as a politician in this country. That's not the way it should be. We should have systems in which the people who are responsible for the public trust, who are responsible for their civic duties, are held accountable when they make violations. And the civilizations that function well do that. They hold people are held accountable. They are held lawfully accountable when they break civic codes, when they violate civic trust, when they profiteer off of something, when they just give their friends a padded contract. You know, these are places who've got that sorted out. You know, make sure that those things just don't happen that way on a regular basis like they do in places where there's more corruption. Doesn't mean that there is not a single corrupt person on the planet. It just means that they have chosen through conscious social action and lawful social action and social lawful action to get their society in a place where it is because they wanted to get there. They were at a point some time ago where it's like, oh, this corruption thing, this is not working. This is not helping. This is like really making things a mess. This is not how we want to live. And so enough people at some point, you know, created a movement of social political change in their world and said, no, we're going to hold people accountable because it's what we should do. It's the right and honorable thing to do. And they're a not too hostily aggressive species. So it was really a lot easier for them, I think, in some ways to sort it out and to talk it out and to organize it out than what we've been having. We're a very aggressive species. And so we have a hard time working stuff out the same way without advantage, without, you know, what am I getting out of it? And what's my advantage? And what's my profit if I say yes to this? Versus someone who comes from a species that's just not as biologically, militarily, socially as aggressive and is much more willing to talk about collective compromise.
Do they have a reptilian brain?
They have a brain that's really similar to ours. So they have a reptilian base, yeah, just like we do.
Okay.
A reptilian spine, yeah.
Okay.
Brain stem is reptilian nature, yeah. They're almost biologically identical to us, which is a whole other story, but they're really, really biologically close.
And do they have a lot of freedom?
Oh, yeah, I would think so. I mean, it's freedom of speech, freedom of association, absolutely. You got a complaint, you're totally allowed to say it. I have never been to in a city there where they had a curfew because of crime or violence. I mean, places where you can walk the street, you know, late at night with relative safety, not knowing that there's just poverty breeds crime. And when you eliminate poverty, one of the first things that you eliminate after poverty is crime. You eliminate vast swaths of crime by eliminating poverty. If you eliminated poverty on the island of Manhattan, you wouldn't have anybody getting mugged because poverty would be eliminated. You would eliminate muggings, and you would probably eliminate most carjackings. You would, 90% or more of those types of crimes would simply desist if people weren't desperate for money. That's what causes those people to commit those types of crimes, because you're like, I'm desperate, I got to do it, I'm going to go mug somebody. Okay. But if there's no poverty, so that people aren't stressful about their roof over their head, the food on their table, the clothes on their back, then you eliminate crime. You eliminate, like, the first year that you eliminate poverty, you eliminate 75% of all crime. And within 3 to 5 years, you eliminate 90 to 95%.
Oh, wow. Makes sense.
That's what eliminating poverty does. It eliminates crime.
So you've often talked about this fake alien invasion, and that after that, we would have a civilization that's better for everybody. Is that the sort of civilization?
That's the hope. Yeah, I mean, we would like to think that we're looking at models like the Sonarans, and saying, this is a direction we can go. This is a way that we can steer our planet and make it better. And we're not using like cookie cutter solutions. We're not necessarily saying their solutions are our solutions. What we're able to look at is these other models and say, let's really think how we can take what we have and turn it into something that's a lot more healthy and a lot more functional for the entire citizenry and the entire planet by doing that. I mean, they burn no fossil fuels, none whatsoever. They have no coal. They don't burn coal. They don't burn oil. They don't burn gasoline. They don't burn, petroleum products for industry. They have incredibly clean air, incredibly clean groundwater. It's an incredibly beautiful place to be because they have eliminated the use of fossil fuels and therefore have almost no pollution of any kind and have clean air. It's so, we can do those things. We've seen from the lockdown, for instance, that when China had to shut down all its factories, that the air cleaned up in about a week and a half, that all of a sudden the air was clean. We started seeing swans and dolphins in the Venice canals as the canals cleared up and mud stopped swirling around and fishing was swimming. So all of the sort of damage that we do from sort of just like pounding the environment, the minute that we stop, the recovery process is fast. So any notion that, somehow, we've done too much damage already, we now have seen, turn off the factories for a week and the air cleans up. For a week, just turn off for a week. So the minute that we change all of these, horribly fossil fuel burning factories into green factories is the minute that we can just start to see, an immediate transition back into a cleaner, healthier, more breathable environment by stopping polluting, because we've seen the evidence that it does happen really, really quickly.
So is it Tesla's technology? Do you think that would give us that clean air, clean energy?
Well, I mean, Tesla was one of the first people to develop any sort of free energy models. But since Tesla, we have a number of people who have developed a number of technologies that are all clean, require no burning of fossil fuels. You have electron pumps, zero-point energy generators, saltwater powered hydrogen cracking motors that are completely clean and, leave only a residue of, water vapor behind them, like Stan Meyer's water powered car. And I believe Daniel Dingle has made a similar device, who's an inventor in the Philippines, who's made a similar concoction that sits in the front of an old sedan that he pours salt water into, and it separates the hydrogen out and pumps it into in very tiny amounts of hydrogen into an engine, and as a regular combustion engine, and runs off of that for miles and miles and miles on a little teeny 2 cups of salt water. So there are a number of things that we can do that are clean and involve just not using any fossil burning fuels at all. There are just people who make tremendous amounts of money making sure that we're dependent on fossil fuels for as long as possible. And as long as those people have their way, that's what's going to happen. So again, it just becomes one of those things that people have to make the demand for the change and insist that we change to these technologies that we have. It's not like we have to develop the technologies. It's not like we have to come up with them. It's not like we have to spend the next 10 years like cracking this egg that we don't know how to do. We've literally got the tech sitting on the shelf, sitting in people's garages. People have developed them, inventors have worked on them, but because some corporation hasn't figured out how to make a profit using it, it's not, massively available to the general public. But the technology is there. Yeah. It's readily available. We could snap our fingers and start transitioning all of our fossil fuel burning technology to green technology immediately. We could convert every fossil fuel burning source of energy, including every automobile and every factory and every power plant, and convert them to something that's green and cheaper, more cost effective in less than 5 years. If that was really our goal, to make that happen, we could do that in less than 5 years.
Wow. And what would be an example of what, on that planet you were talking about, of what that would do to a criminal, let's say a serial killer? What would they do? What would be?
That would be such a rare thing in their culture that there's like a special hospital slash prison for the criminally insane that actually probably has a very tiny number of people in it, and probably a very high number of medical professionals, of doctors and nurses per patient, to study why people would behave that way when it's so socially anomalous for someone to do that they would want to study thoroughly what is happening biologically, psychologically, sociologically in people's brains that's causing this. And what they would find, for the most part, as I'm to understand this, is that most of the time, people who are in that position in this culture, it's because of a neurobiological anomaly, something that happened in their brain, either when they were young or as they were something that developed as an adult, that wasn't caught through a normal medical examination, that caused their brain to go into a state of dysfunction and for them to cross social boundary lines by murdering people. But again, it's something that they have a tiny hospital for the criminally insane, where those people would be housed and studied and, treated as well. I mean, the goal would be to medically treat this person, whatever's happening in their brain or their psychology, to, stop the behavior, to stop the compulsions or the impulsions, so that someday you can have that person say, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I don't know what was wrong with me. I was completely out of my brain. I'm so glad that I don't have the desire to kill people anymore. Thank you so much." And then, to be honest, a person who had been treated for such a thing could be reintroduced to society. They would have no problem treating someone for something that they feel, if once they've treated it neurobiologically, if this is really like a condition for violence, that if they've properly treated the condition, that you can reinsert this person back into society with relatively low chances of them continuing to do harm. But that's from a very thorough neurobiological medical understanding of criminal behavior, which we're just scratching the surface of here.
Wow, right. Cool. So back to the questions. Are you aware of how you arrive at your destination regarding the jump rooms? Or do you suddenly find yourself there like you never left?
I'm not sure I'm understanding that question.
I guess, are you aware of the transition from...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, my personal experience is that most people, get a certain discombobulation in the inner ear that causes a disorientation experience. So I feel like I kind of go inside out, tumble around in a circle, and then pop back out again. So, but that's all an inner ear experience. It's not like that's actually happening physiologically. It's just what my sensory apparatus is telling me is happening with the experience, because it confuses the inner ear. And the more times you've done it, the quicker your recovery is. But the first few times you're dizzy for a minute or two or 3 or 4, or 5. You can be dizzy and confused for a couple of minutes the first few times. It can take a few times before you get to adjust to it. But yeah, there's definitely a trend. There's a portal that you go into, and you feel this discombobulation going into it and then coming out of it, recovering from the discombobulation. And then again, with some experience, fairly quick recovery. I got to the point where I could pop through, feel completely spun around, and then within 10 seconds, be right back to equilibrium.
Okay, cool. Do you have any say in anything outside of commanding your troops? Oh, I'm not quite sure what she means.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what that question is implying either there, or what that question's asking.
Yeah.
Say it again. No, say it one more time though.
Do you have a say in anything outside of commanding your troops?
So as an independent field commander, in my current status, I have total responsibility under my independent field command. And I certainly do have the ability to have conversations and make suggestions when having conversations with my brigadier general or other members of the command staff. So it's not that, so I wouldn't say so much that I have a say as that my input is accepted. So an experienced enough officer at this point that if I have input or a suggestion, it's taken into account like everybody else's opinion and suggestions, and given equal sort of consideration or disconsideration if it's a bad idea. But, you know, at some points I get to make suggestions that I would hope that I'm just contributing to a process in which the collaborative outcome is for everyone's benefit. It's not whether someone used my idea or took my idea. I really could care less about that, but I'm happy to be able to, and glad that I have the opportunity to input into that process and at least have my opinions thrown onto the table with everybody else's and given consideration.
Okay, cool. Did you die on mission, and how were you revived?
Sure, lots of times. So the process of getting the body into stasis and then getting the body into a holographic cellular regenerator, a holobed, depending on how conscious or unconscious you can be, will depend on whether you really stay in your body for that entire process or not. You can start to die a little bit, and you can even die most of the way, which is crossing into this sort of in-between place that people go when they're crossing between this side and that other side. But then if you're not all the way dead, then you can come back, as long as the connection between your silver cord and that part of you is still connected, then your body can be restored and you can come back. So the process, I'm not really sure how to answer that question other than that the medical process, the stasis process, keeps your body from completely and totally dying, but you might die sort of and go into a semi-comatose or comatose state while that consciousness part of your body goes into this in-between state. I've been there a number of times, and I consider that dead enough. You know, maybe not all the way, like I didn't cross over dead, but I was dead enough to not be here anymore. And if I'd wanted to not be here and be there, I could have made that choice, but I made the choice given that there was still a connection to come back. But you're in that place where it's a choice, where I consider that's, you know, at least mostly dead, but not totally dead. To be totally dead, you have to be completely disconnected from your body with no silver cord connection. And then it's like snipping the string to a balloon, and the balloon has no way to get back to its anchor point, and you're just floating off and you're gone to wherever you go next. But as long as there's some connection, there's some ability to come back. But that's still, like I said, mostly dead if you're at that point.
So what did you experience in that in-between state?
Kind of the same thing every time, but different. Mm-hmm. So the location itself, or what it sort of manifests itself to be, is like an amalgam of parks that I used to play at when I was a kid. Oh. And there's a little bridge, little pond, and there's a bench, and then there are people who I consider to be spiritual teachers, spiritual advisors, who sit on the bench and we have a conversation about what just happened and how I feel about it, whether I'm moving on or I'm going back. And I always like, no, I'm not done. I got to go back, and that's okay. And then I'd go back out the way I came in, and then end up back in my body at some point. But it's each kind of that near-death experience is unique to the person as far as where they are, what amalgam or what place they recreate, you know, in their sort of construct of their mind, of their memory, of that sort of quantum spiritual place, and who they consider to be their spiritual guides or advisors, which can be family members or historical figures or spiritual figures that can, and whether it is that person or just a representation of that person, mm-hmm. I can't really answer that, and I don't know that it really matters. Mm-hmm. It's an individual process. It's a personal process. So if it was to happen to you, where you would go, who you would talk to, and the process that it would be about would be very specific to you personally, and really wouldn't matter to me or anybody else where you were or what happened, because it's your experience. So my experience is the same way. It matters to me. It doesn't matter to anybody else. It doesn't matter whether it's a real experience or a not real experience, or I don't know, they can be real and not real at the same time when you're talking about that kind of non-physical, quasi-quantum dimensional spaces. So I don't know that any of the answers really matter as far as like what it is, what it isn't. I think the fact of the matter is that it just happens, and people who've experienced it enough knows that it can happen regular and again and again. And in my case, something that's happened hundreds of times. So it's been pretty consistent. And I still don't know that I have a better answer for what it is or what the answer is, other than that it's this transition point. It's a transition place between here and there.
Okay. All right. And also, are you teaching any psionics classes online?
The likelihood that there will soon be a fundamentals class online for my psionics course is incredibly high. Okay. We're just in the middle of this transition with my website and my internet presence and things that are happening in my life and around us that are causing me to ask lots of questions and slowly rebuild something that I'm kind of ejecting what I've been doing most of the content as far as interviews that I have done, that I have created over the last decade, are garbage at this point. Like I don't watch them myself. I never watch my own interviews, but I know enough people who have watched them for me, who have objectively stated, look, technology's come a long ways, in the last 10 years, as far as audio, video quality that people are able to transmit through their devices. So a lot of the content, that interviews that were being done years ago, crappy audio, crappy video, and we're just at a state and age when audiences are a little more discerning, and if they hear crappy audio or they're looking at crappy video, they move along and they move to something else. So there is this notion, my PR consultant coordinator, so my PR coordinator and I are discussing using my new website to create some personal content by being able to say, okay, how about I tell my story from the beginning the way that I would like to tell it, instead of relying on everybody else to ask me interviews and put up on their material, so that I can have a series of bits that people can go to and click and get the version that I would like people to get in my own words in some sort of chronological order. As addendum to that would then be the fundamentals class, the psionics fundamentals class that I would like to do. And then we still want to do a more advanced psionics class, which requires an in-person presence. That is still going to require me to do a class in a room with people who show up physically in that room for me able to teach them those techniques. There are certain things that I just don't rely on the ability to teach through a Zoom conversation or a teleconference the way that I can teach someone in the same room. And so there are certain things I'm willing to do, and I think I'm going to have to do through an online course, through fundamentals. And then there will be, for people who've taken the fundamentals online course, then they can come and take an in-person class wherever they happen to be doing that next. The most likely place that I will be doing my next class is going to be here in Sedona, but there's just like 20 things on my plate, and I'm doing them 3 at a time right now, and we're getting there. So we're not there yet, but we're getting there. That's all being sorted out. The answer is yes, soon, don't know when. That's about all I can say.
Oh, thank you so much, Randy. Again, you're so generous with your time, and very important information, things we can really relate to and help us as well. Yeah.
I feel that it's important to be thorough. And if I'm going to be thorough, then I need to take whatever time I need to explain things and hopefully answer all the questions. That's important for me to be thorough that way. So my pleasure.
Right. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.